Hi, my name is Jessica, and I'm 22 years old from Cookeville, Tennessee. I grew up in a very loving Christian home, had a wonderful childhood. We were in the church every time the doors were open, and I lived this way up until about my senior year in high school when I started drinking and partying, smoking weed on the weekends. And as I entered into college, I started partying more and more, and I was introduced to a lot of different drugs, but one drug in particular overtook my life, and it was pain pills, Oxycontin, anything I could get my hands on, basically. And I was dating a guy, and we did this drug, and then I ended up pregnant, and we decided to get married and start our family. But I thought, now that I'm married and have a baby on the way, I have to stop doing drugs, but instead it just got worse and worse. I tried to stop on my own, but I just couldn't, and I ended up in deep depression, and my life was just awful for 2 or 3 years. And then I went to give birth to my son, and it was by God's grace that absolutely nothing was wrong with him. He came out perfectly fine, and it's because I had praying parents. And after I gave birth to him, I didn't stop doing drugs. It just got worse and worse because I was just so depressed. And I eventually overdosed, and while my husband was in rehab, he called me and he said, "We have got to get our lives together." And he was introduced to Teen Challenge by his dad, and we've been here for 10 months now. This is him. God has just done so much for us this year. We have a good relationship with our family. Our son he just turned 1 year old, and he's doing great. And whenever we graduate in December, we don't know what we're doing yet, but we know that it's all in God's hands. And I give him all the glory and the honor. Thank you.
My name is Matt Garrett, and I'm also from Cookeville, Tennessee. I grew up in a good Christian family also, and always knew what was right and wrong, and always believed in Jesus, but I thought it was something I would do later in life, and until then, I was going to go out and do what I wanted to do. And throughout high school, I smoked and drank and experimented with drugs, and that led all the way into college. And when I was in college, I started doing pain pills heavily, and I met Jessica, and when we were together, after a few months of being together, that's all we did. And we both knew what we were doing was wrong, and she eventually got pregnant, and we thought, this is what we need. This is our way to stay sober. This will help us. And it didn't. And we had our son, and he was perfectly fine, and we knew that was God, but we still couldn't hang on to that. We still didn't know how to have that relationship with him, so we just kept running and just we were in and out of rehab programs trying to find answers and trying to find what would keep us clean. And it was a Sunday morning, it was in November of last year, and I remember I was in rehab. She was at home with our son, who was 2 months old, and I just remember getting on my knees for the first time in my life and actually crying out to God to help me, because I knew what I was doing was wrong, and I knew I was going to get out and use again, and nothing was different. And within 4 hours of doing that, my dad shows up at the center I'm at in Alabama, and he says he needs to talk to me, and he sits me down and tells me that Jessica overdosed the night before and that she was in the hospital, but she was okay. And I just began to cry and just weep, and I was so upset, and I didn't know what to do. And that's when my dad mentioned Teen Challenge. He said, pull out an application to Western Michigan Teen Challenge, and said, if you're not ready to go home, if you're just going to do the same thing, you need to finally get Jesus in your life. You need to be that husband and father that he wants you to be, and you know you need to be. And at that point, for the first time in my life, I felt like God was listening, and he actually answered my prayer. And so at that point, I just completely surrendered everything to him and just gave him my family, my son, my wife, and just came up here broken. And after a month of being in the program, they brought Jessica up here, and they don't normally do that, but I just thank them for just listening to God and when he put it on their hearts and just allowing her to come up here, because they don't normally do that. But God knew what I needed and knew what my family needed, and I just give him all the glory, the honor, and the praise.